Scottish Gaelic Spelling and Pronunciation. This is a video about how Scottish Gaelic uses letters to represent sounds. I'm not going to go into all the different sounds that Gaelic makes with these letters, but just sort of the kind of nuts and bolts of how it works, how the letters are combined and used in different ways to represent different sounds. This is a video for learners and people who are curious, as well as those who think the spelling is crazy or that it's a bad system. The Gaelic spelling system is actually really well suited to the language, and it's very consistent within itself. I'd actually much rather read a Gaelic word that I don't know than an English word that I don't know. I'd feel more confident in having a better chance of being able to pronounce it correctly. What it is just very different from English, and I think that's what a lot of people see when they think, oh, Gaelic spelling is horrible. So first off, let's have a look at the Gaelic alphabet. So here's the Gaelic alphabet. Like, oh yeah, it's alphabet. But what you may start to notice as you look at it for a little bit longer is that it's missing a few letters. So the ones that it's missing are J, K, Q, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Gaelic just doesn't use those letters. You'll see them occasionally, especially in like place names and things like that, where they just, they're an intrinsic part of the name, and it's a foreign language word. But in terms of Gaelic words, they're just not used. So if we're looking at these letters that Gaelic doesn't use, not all of the sounds are not represented in Gaelic. So definitely like the J sound and the K sound are represented in Gaelic. In fact, actually, either C or K is a bit superfluous in English anyways. Because you have a S sound and a K sound. So as long as you have one of each, you don't need the C, the K, and the S. Anyways, but Gaelic does use combinations of letters to make those different sounds. So let's have a look at how that works. First of all, Gaelic letters are broken down into consonants and vowels. And I've just realized I've got two S's in my consonant pile and an O. There you go. But consonants and vowels, the same as in English. It's the same breakdown. There's just less consonants in Gaelic. Same amount of vowels, excepting Y, which is only a sometimes vowel anyways. But then the vowels are further broken down into broad vowels, A, O, and U. And then there are the slender vowels, E and I. And English does this as well, because we know that, particularly with C's and G's, if a C is next to an E or an I, it's quite likely to be a S sound instead of a K sound, like ice versus cake. And we do it with G's. We have the soft G sound, the J, which is kind of duplicated in the J. Gaelic doesn't have a soft C and a soft G sound, so hard C's and hard G's, but it's the same principle, except that in Gaelic, all of the consonants have the possibility of being broad next to an A, O, or U, or slender next to an E or an I. And to give you an example of this, we'll look at the letter D. DA is da. DE, J. Da, J. So you can see there's a big difference between those two. And what Gaelic's done is that the rule is you have to surround a consonant by the same sort of vowel. Because there can be such a big difference, that allows you to say for certain whether that is a broad sound or a slender sound that consonant's going to make, or a group of consonants. Just a little note here on the accents. All of the vowels can have an accent in modern Gaelic spelling in Scotland. They're all the one-way accent. There's the grave and acute accents in Nova Scotia Gaelic spelling and in older Gaelic spelling in Scotland. So fundamentally, on the most basic level, what they do is just to make the vowel sound longer. So ah instead of ah. But there are often pairs of words where one has accented vowel and one doesn't, and they have completely different meanings. So it is important to get those accents in there and to make them longer sounds. The next thing that Gaelic does is to add an H, which is called lenition. And at first this is like, this feels terribly weird. But English does this too. English adds H's. We add H's after other consonants to change the sound. So a CH is a ch sound, whereas a C is just a k sound. TH is the th sound instead of just a t sound. So English does this too. Gaelic just does it more. So almost all of the consonants can be lenited. They can add an H to them, and it will change the sound. So a good example of that is to say good morning, you say matin va. So we can see there's a good example of the regular M, matin, and the lenited M, va. So it goes from a M sound to a V sound. As I mentioned, there are 3 letters that don't. So L, N, and R, I kind of think of them as like a group, a gang. They're a friend group, and none of them lenite. So here's a little non-linitable rabble. Rabble's not a great word for it. They're not being particularly naughty or anything. They just don't want to lenite, but needed an R word there to make it a good mnemonic. So non-linitables, and you'll see them be a group for other things. They will do other things together as well. So if we put those 2 things together, the broad and slender and the lenited or not lenited, you can see where each consonant has a possibility of 4 sounds, where it's regular, not lenited, broad, slender, and then lenited can also be broad and slender. So you can have 4 possible sounds. So this is the letter D, which is actually one of the few letters that actually has 4 separate sounds. Most of them have 2 or 3, but not all the way 4. So like we were looking at broad D, da, slender D, J, broad lenited, ga, slender lenited, ye. So you've got 4 different sounds there. So like I said, there's a possibility for each consonant to have 4 separate sounds. However, most of them don't. Either the broad and the slender will be the same, or the lenited will be the same. So you only have 2 or 3 sounds for each consonant. And like I said, neither of these 2 things are completely foreign from English. We do both of them in English. We just don't do them to the extent that Gaelic does. The next thing in kind of getting the sound right for Gaelic is the emphasis, which is almost always on the first syllable. So daunsa means dancing, daunsa. So you want to get that emphasis on the first syllable, unless you see an accent in the second syllable, in which case the accent will be on the second syllable. But that's not very many words, and they tend to be borrow words. Okay, so another thing is the switch from voiced to unvoiced. And if you don't know what this means, there are 2 kind of elements that go into making a sound. And one of them is the way that you are shaping your mouth and tongue and throat and teeth that produces that sound. And the other one is whether or not you're engaging your vocal cords. You're making that vibration. So a voiced one will be where you're making that vibration. And an unvoiced one will be where you're not. You're not using your vocal cords to produce the sound. You're just using the rest of your mouth and throat and neck and tongue and all those things that go into making a sound. And there are pairs of letters that are voiced and unvoiced. So the mouth shape is the same, but one has a voice and one doesn't. And the 3 main ones in Gaelic that switch are D goes to T, G goes to C. It's a hard C, it's the K sound. There's no K in Gaelic, so there's a C. But B goes to P. So let me just demonstrate those a little bit. So D, if you put your hand on the front of your throat and say D, you can feel the vibration of your vocal cords. D, T. But if you feel your mouth, T, 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 it's just the percussive sound. No vibration, but it's the same mouth shape. And the same with G, K, G, K. Your mouth is not moving to change between those 2 sounds. It's whether or not you're using your vocal cords or not. And B, P, B, P. Again. So what's happening with voiced to unvoiced is that if you have a voiced consonant, D, G, or B, it will only be voiced if it's the first letter in a word. And if it's in the middle or the end, it will become unvoiced. So that's where words like agat come in. Agat's a good one for the emphasis and the voiced to unvoiced. A-G-A-D. It sounds like it's spelled A-C-A-T. Agat. But it's A-G-A-D. So both the G and the D have become unvoiced because they're not in the first, they're not the first sound in the word. So that's kind of all of it. Let's look at a kind of a word that would be pretty scary and talk about another thing is that Gaelic uses chunks of sound. So this is the word niadaroch. It means laundry. So we can see that there are slender consonants and broad consonants, and it looks like there's a lot of extra vowels in there. And one of the reasons is that because we're changing from broad to slender. So we start off slender, then we change to broad. So we've got to have an EA there to transition. And then we've got an AI to transition back to slender, and then an EA to transition back to broad. So that's one of the reasons why there might be extra letters, particularly vowels, is that you're switching from broad to slender. We've got some lenited. We've got a GH there. We've got a CH. Actually, this is a CHD, which is its own combination. And the three parts that are colored here are three different parts of the word. So we've got the root of the word ni, which is the verb to clean, to wash. And then we've got dar, which is an ending that means a person who does something. And then we've got ach, which is something gets stuck on things, but tends to be something that tells you that this is a noun. So it's kind of washing person thing. So laundry. Niatarach. And once you've kind of have learned the broads and the slenders, the lenited, where you're going to put the emphasis, your voiced, unvoiced ones, then you start to learn these chunks that you recognize are getting repeated in different types of words. Gaelic's actually really easy to decode in terms of what sound it's going to make. And also, with the chunks, they help you with the meaning. Oh, I know ni, and I know that is going to be the ending for people or things that do a thing, and ach is a noun. So you start to be able to actually puzzle out the meanings of words as well as what the pronunciation is going to be. So there you go. That's just a little bit about how Gaelic uses letters to make different sounds, to represent the different sounds, and how actually the spelling system works really well, gives you a lot of information about what the word is and where it comes from, and helps you to be able to pronounce it correctly, even though it might look a little bit daunting to people who are just beginning, who are unfamiliar with the language and the spelling system and how it works. And I hope you found that to be helpful.